I know there's going to be some people looking at my title and think, what the hell am I talking about? Because so far this offseason, the Atlanta Hawks, they haven't made any quote-unquote blockbuster deals. They haven't went out and added any superstars to their rosters. But when I look at this offseason, it's not necessarily the players that they picked up so far in free agency, even though I think these guys are high-quality basketball players. I'm more so fascinated on what the Atlanta Hawks, the nucleus that they already have, and what they were already building, and then they were able to go out and get some guys who I think is going to further develop some of the young players that they already have on this team. And just to start briefly going over what they've done so far this offseason, the biggest name that they brought in so far was Kristaps Porziņģis, and I think they got him at a pretty good discount because the Boston Celtics, they're going through something a little unique right now. They won a championship a couple of years ago, and then their best player, Jason Tatum, he goes down with an Achilles injury, and he's going to miss a huge chunk of time. And the Boston Celtics, they have a bunch of players that's making a bunch of money, and we know with the new cap rules, that's not a good thing for teams. So they're trying to dump off some of their players, and the Atlanta Hawks, they were able to go out and get a guy that could make them significantly better without having to give up too much. I think they had to give up Terrence Mann, Georges Niang, and a second-round draft pick, and in return, they get to take this risk on Kristaps Porziņģis. And we all know it's a risk. We can't sugarcoat that because Kristaps Porziņģis, he's not on the court at all times. But we look at the Atlanta Hawks last season, they had that same situation with their center rotation with Clint Capella. Clint was dealing with a lot of back issues last season, and he left in free agency to go to the Houston Rockets. So if Kristaps Porziņģis is having some moments where he's not on the basketball court, they're going to be already used to it. Okongwu is going to be used to it. He's a guy that's comfortable with playing with bench minutes, starter minutes, whatever the Atlanta Hawks ask him to do. And then the upside to that is that when Kristaps Porziņģis is available, he's going to be a better basketball player than what Clint Capella is. So that's a big thing for me for the Atlanta Hawks. And Kristaps Porziņģis, he's just a perfect big for today's NBA. He can stretch the floor. He can take advantages of a lot of mismatches down in the post, and then he's a very solid rim protector. So I love the addition of Kristaps Porziņģis to the Atlanta Hawks. And the Hawks didn't stop there. They didn't go out and still didn't find that superstar player, but another high-quality role player, and that's Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who was formerly a Timberwolf, and he made a huge name for himself in the last couple of years, especially during the 2024 NBA playoffs. He played a huge role with the Minnesota Timberwolves, knocking off the defending champs in the semifinals of the Western Conference playoffs. He did a great job, him and Jaden McDaniels, in neutralizing Jamal Murray from the Denver Nuggets. But how they acquired Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they did it in a sign and trade deal with the Minnesota Timberwolves. They signed him to a 4-year, $60 million plus deal. I think they had to give up another second-round draft pick and some more cash considerations to get this deal done, but they bring in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's a very solid basketball player and who can help the Atlanta Hawks in some areas that they need help in. He's a guy that can initiate the offense at times, so another ball handler to put alongside Trae Young and Dyson Daniels. He's gotten a lot better at his catch and shoot threes over the years, and we know the Atlanta Hawks, they're a fast-paced playing team. They like to get up a lot of threes, and they like to accurately knock down those three-point shooters. So Nickeil Alexander-Walker, he's a very solid three-point shooter, and then the best part of his game is his defense. He's a great point of attack defender. So him, I'm pretty sure Coach Quinn Snyder, he's going to throw out some lineups out there where we see Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels playing alongside each other. So that's another great pickup for the Atlanta Hawks in this offseason. And then we also had the addition of Luke Kennard. So the guard room is looking real nice for the Atlanta Hawks. They have Trae Young, they have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they have Dyson Daniels, and they also now have Luke Kennard, who is another sniper. And Luke Kennard is one of those guys, he might be a little underrated. He's not a household name. He can do a little bit of everything on the offensive side of the ball. Not the strongest defender, but he's extremely accurate from three-point range. So he's going to be seeing the court whenever the Atlanta Hawks, whenever they need some shooting, whenever they might be down and they need some quick, instant offense. Luke Kennard is a guy that can get a hot hand pretty quickly, and he doesn't need to see the court too much. He usually always keeps his flame on. So those are the three main additions. And we also can't forget about what the Atlanta Hawks did in the 2025 NBA draft. They had the 23rd overall pick, and with that pick, they get Asa Noah out of the University of Georgia, who plays the center position. I love this pick a lot because we kind of discussed this a little bit earlier in the video. We know that Kristaps Porziņģis throughout his NBA career, we can't sugarcoat it, he's not always the most available basketball player. So to get another center in the room, and a center that I think can come in and be real effective next to a guy like Trae Young had a crazy season last year assisting the basketball. Like, he loves getting guys involved. So they go out there, get another rim running big, a guy that's solid at rebounding, a guy that's solid at finishing around the rim, catching lobs, and then also he's really good on the defensive side of the ball. He can move his feet on the perimeter pretty well for a guy his size. He stands at 6'10", and then also he can protect the rim. The only thing he really needs to keep working on is just being consistent at rebounding the basketball, and also just putting on some more weight to his frame so he can get some of that NBA strength. So those are really the additions that the Atlanta Hawks made this offseason. Like we said, a lot of valuable, a lot of solid NBA players. And then what was so big on this offseason for me is what the Atlanta Hawks already had. And Trae Young is always a fun basketball player to watch. He's very entertaining. So I seen a lot of Atlanta Hawks games last year. When those guys were, at their peak last season, they were a very entertaining team to watch. And we all know when they were at their peak, when they had a certain somebody healthy in the lineup, and that was Jalen Johnson, who Jalen Johnson, I've seen him since he's come into the NBA. But last year, watching Jalen Johnson, it really made me, I became a fan for him. And when I heard he was going to be out for the season with that shoulder injury, I was a little disappointed because, like I said, he was growing every game, every week, every month. He was getting better and better. So I'm looking at the Atlanta Hawks. They're going to have Jalen Johnson back next season, who can be another playmaker, another threat, another guy that you legitimately have to game plan for alongside Trae Young. So getting a player like that back in the lineup alongside all of those guys that you just brought in this offseason, that's going to work wonders. And just to briefly go over his game, he's a very athletic point forward. And with a player like him, with all that size and that athleticism, a lot of people overlook the playmaker that he is. That's where I became fascinated with Jalen Johnson. He makes some outstanding reads, and he makes some outstanding passes, and he's solid on the defensive side of the ball. He's good for a steal and a block a game every single night. So he's a very impactful player. He's super young, and he has so many more strides to hit, in my opinion. I'm hoping he can have a fully healthy season next year. And then also, man, the young nucleus for the Atlanta Hawks is very underrated. We look at a guy like Dyson Daniels, and what a great trade this was for the Atlanta Hawks, because they came off of DeJounte Murray, I believe. I can't remember the exact all the pieces for this deal, but I know it was centered around DeJounte Murray. They get a lottery pick back in Dyson Daniels. I remember, man, I was covering the Pelicans a lot because I thought they was doing all the right things to build around Zion Williamson. Obviously, this all has crumbled, but I remember covering Dyson Daniels, doing, reading his draft profile, watching his highlights in the NBA G League, and he was a very, very solid prospect. And something that the Atlanta Hawks should be excited about with Dyson Daniels is that he showed flashes last season with all the things that they said he could show flashes in his draft profile on the offensive and the defensive side of the ball. And we all know it got crazy on the defensive side of the ball last year. Dyson Daniels was a maniac. He played himself into the defensive player of the year conversation. He made all NBA defense, and he was just a nuisance, a pest on the defensive side of the ball. And no matter who that matchup was, he was going to make those guys work for those buckets. And it was very, very fun to watch. So they have Dyson Daniels, who took a huge leap on the defensive side of the ball, a gigantic leap, and then also offensively he was very solid as well, having to find his footing next to a guy like Trae Young. Trae Young is a guy that's going to have the basketball in his hands. He's going to be the engine of the offense. So sometimes when you are another guard, it can be hard to find your rhythm alongside a player like that. But I think Dyson Daniels, he did a great job of being aggressive last season, finding his spots where he can be comfortable and be effective with or without the basketball. So I'm loving Dyson Daniels for the Atlanta Hawks. And then also we forget that that, the Atlanta Hawks, they have a number 1 overall pick on their team. And I know the 2024 NBA draft class, it wasn't looked at as, one of those special draft classes, but still, Zachary, Risacher, he was the guy that was thought to be the best prospect out of a bunch of guys that's coming into the NBA. So that's still something, to be proud of. So they have Zachary Risacher, who did show some flashes of how good he can be last season when it comes to being a guy knocking down that 3-point shot. He's real savvy. He's real technically sound, real fundamentally sound. I'm really hoping he can polish things up a little bit next season and see how he is. I think he's in a real good situation to where it's not that pressure of being the number 1 overall pick. He can grow into his game and figure out, what his game is, because he has a bunch of different tools, and he has some great size for the NBA. So, this is what I'm looking at with the Atlanta Hawks, and they still have, Trae Young at the point guard position, of course. So all of these things right here, what the Atlanta Hawks did this offseason, they really caught my eye. And then also another thing we have to take into account, the state that the Eastern Conference is in right now. The team that just went to the NBA Finals, they essentially lost 2 out of their top 3 players, with Tyrese Halliburton being out for the season and Miles Turner going to the Milwaukee Bucks. We look at the state that the Milwaukee Bucks is in. They don't really have a certified number 2 guy when it goes past Giannis Antetokounmpo. We know what's going on with the Boston Celtics. The Philadelphia 76ers, they look good on paper, but that need for Joel Embiid, that's still a big question mark until we see him come out on the basketball court. So it's a lot of teams that we would consider powerhouses in the Eastern Conference that have big question marks right now. So the Atlanta Hawks, they did the best thing they could do to add to this young nucleus so they could get a little bit more competitive. So I'm going to be very excited to watch them next season. But that's what I want to talk about with you guys today. Let me know how you feel about this offseason down in the comment section. And if you enjoy, please leave a like and then subscribe. Subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man. And that's curtains.